Hello students, I am Sam sir and today we are going to see the chapter number 3 in your geography textbook. The book's name is India, People and Economy and the name of the chapter is Human Development. Now if you look at a picture like this, maybe you have been to a place like this. It shows a very modern society, good high-rise buildings, you have good malls, you have good roads, you have expensive cars and so on. So when we talk about development, what exactly do we mean? So this is the chapter about that. The usual concept of development is to see high-rise buildings and have flyovers and metro service and ultra-modern malls and mega cinemaplex, discos and clubs, a fast life and expensive cars and a lot of modernization. You have leisure, you have comfort, you have everything automated, a lot of computerization, industrialization, you have a very good transportation system, very good communication network, you have very good educational facilities and healthcare facilities, and you also have safety and security for your life and property. But this is only a partial view. You know it very well that this is only one side of the coin. This is only a partial and one-sided view of development. And this view of development is known as Western or Eurocentric view of development. That is only we are looking at only the good side of the development. But we also need to see the bad side of development. And you are already familiar with these things, especially in a country like ours. We have juggies and we have slum clusters, we have traffic jam, congestions, and crimes. We have poverty and starvation, because of which we have children who beg for food and money. We have child labor, we don't have enough housing facilities, we don't have access to potable water, we have polluted air and water, so on. Now, this photograph is not from a village. It is from a city, a developed city, a modern city with all the modern amenities. And such views are very common in our cities. Now, if you imagine that this labor or this poor man is a labor working in construction, maybe is constructing roads or is constructing buildings, the cinema, mall, or something like that. And if he is not allowed to enter there, what he is helped in building, then that is known as social distributive injustice. We will come to that little later. Now, in the Indian context, we have development as a mixed bag of opportunities. And we have opportunities on one side, and we also have neglect and deprivations. It is possible to see this very much in the city itself, the metropolitan centers itself. And we have both the extremes, the good and the bad. And availability of all the modern amenities are there. And at the same time, we have utter deprivation. We have the marginalized people who are still struggling. We have the scheduled castes and tribes. We have the landless agricultural laborers and poor farmers. We have the slum dwellers, and especially the problem of the female population. They are usually the worst sufferers. Now, we also have child labor. Many children do not go to school, or they stop going to school very early because they have to earn money for their family. It's a vicious circle. And usually in India, we start with the colonial past because we have a colonial past. We talk about population explosion because we have a very rapidly growing population and large number as much as well. We talk about limited resources, and we do have all the resources everywhere in the world are always limited. But the problem is the weak institutions we have, the corruption we have, and the lack of education and literacy we have. Colonial past, there are other countries also which have. You already know that Hong Kong used to be a British colony. Population explosion, to some extent that is true. We have a population density of 384 people per square kilometer. But if you look at some other country, let us say Israel, much smaller, less area under cultivation, just 20% against our 42%. They have a population density of 400 people per square kilometer. But it's a progressive economy. So we cannot always blame colonial past and population explosion for our problems. Now, then, what are the true causes? We have institutions like caste and religion. We still have the problem of caste and religion. Our people are poor because they lack economic freedom. They don't have much choice. They have lack of understanding of the nature of poverty. We the people who are not from the poor background, we do not understand poverty as we should. We have political clientelism, where poor are treated as clients of political parties rather than real objects of deprivation. Our politicians play a lot of power. Politics play in double courts with the poor people. We have weak political structure. We have weak and rigid social structure. And this is all a vicious circle. Why are people poor? Because they lack choices. And why do they lack choices? Because they lack freedom and capabilities. And why do they lack freedom and capabilities? Because we have weak government, weak governance rather, and weak institutions, and that keeps the people poor. We cannot guarantee housing to anybody, but we can always guarantee we have more, topics to talk on, such as global warming. We call that in our country main mudda. Now, if you look at the conditions which are worsening, the relative as well as absolute condition of majority of the marginalized section of the society has worsened with the development happening over the years. Isn't it a paradox that development has worsened the condition of the society, especially the marginalized people? So development cannot be a medicine for poverty. It cannot be the medicine for the condition that is existing. It is neither the medicine and not the cause. Let us understand what it is in this chapter. So a vast majority of people are compelled to live under abject poverty and subhuman conditions. If we were to pass this scene, we would press our handkerchief to our noses and not look in that direction and pass. But there's another human being, another Homo sapien here, doing which he should not be doing, but he's still doing it for his livelihood. Now, ecological crisis due to environmental pollution. This is yet another aspect of development that is directly related to deteriorating human conditions. Development is the cause of deteriorating human conditions. Unfortunately, and that's a paradox, really, air and soil and water and noise pollution is now threatening the existence of our society, and it is not just a problem of the poor people. Because the rich people also have to breathe the same air. And the quality of air has become bad because of development. People who do not want to believe this are advised to once visit a very remote village and see and breathe the air and have a glass of water at the hands of the poor villagers. Look at the greenery around, and if you get a chance to sleep there in the night, enjoy the peace and quiet, no noise pollution, no light pollution, and then come back to your houses in your cities and then compare. This is from a city. The municipal water of this color. Can you imagine? Forget about drinking it. Can you use it for bath? We always talk about Delhi air. And look at it. It must be little bit better now because of COVID-19. And that is again another paradox. But if the air of Delhi grows any thicker than this, you could probably cut a slice out of it with a knife and keep it on a plate. Now the causes of declining capabilities of the poor are three, and these are interrelated and each contribute almost equally. First is the declining social capabilities because of displacement and weakening social ties. Mostly the males, they move out of the rural areas and they go to the cities in search for work and employment, and when they go there they find their colleagues who are also similar to them. They have also moved out of their villages to search for work and employment, and there they find that their ties with the friends and relatives are weakening, and they themselves are new in a place and they have weakening ties. This leads to decreasing in personal capabilities, and also lot of diseases because of psychological problems and accidents. They also decrease the personal capabilities, and also we have at the same time the same air and water and soil to breathe and live and drink and be on. That together again contributes to the same declining social capabilities, and this again is a vicious circle. So since we're talking about vicious circles, let's dwell on this slide one more time. We have low income, and because of low income we have inadequate nutritional intake, and because of that we have deterioration in health. Because of that we have low productivity, because of that we have low wages, and because of that we have low income, and the poverty continues. Now let us see what are the weaknesses of so-called development. Development is not able to address the issues of social injustice and regional imbalances and environmental degradation. So what is the meaning of social justice? It means justice in terms of distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society. Social justice is based on the concept of human rights and equality and can be defined as a way in which the human rights are manifested in everyday lives of people at every level of the society. So that is missing, and the contribution to it being missing is because of development. We have regional imbalance. Now if you consider a very developed city like Mumbai, which is there in Maharashtra, it's capital of Maharashtra, and let us talk about some other city in Maharashtra, let us say Latur, not at all an advanced place. So how can one city be renowned worldwide and the other people do not even know? And people from Latur, perhaps they go to Mumbai to search for work and they do not get, or they get work which is not according to their capabilities and choice, and they have to compromise and live a poor life. Then we have environmental degradation. Now let us see the problems which so-called development has created? It has created social distributive injustice. Now you just saw what is social justice. Now let us see what is social distributive justice. Now we are talking about justice. So social distributive justice is a concept that addresses the ownership of goods in a society. It assumes that there is a large amount of fairness in the distribution of goods. Now let's take an example. In social justice is defined as fairness of how rewards and costs are shared or distributed across group members. For example, when some workers work more hours but receive the same pay, the group members may feel that the distributive justice has not occurred because they have put in more number of hours and they have received less pay. So they are victims of injustice rather than beneficiaries of justice. Now, deterioration in the quality of human life and development is because of development. We have ecological crisis and social unrest. There's always a feeling of deprivation. Even with people who are employed, they also feel deprived. We have the labor union and so on and so forth. We have activists. We have also advertisements in the TV which tells us what we do not have. Development creates, reinforces and perpetuates such crises. This you keep in mind. These 4 points are important. Now, this is the reason why development cannot be taken as a remedy of social ills, including development itself. That's a paradox. So, your question can be in exam: how is development responsible for social degradation? Or they may ask you, write a note on how development itself is the cause of social problems and how development itself could be a solution to that. Now, it is cannot be taken as a remedy also because of regional disparities and environmental crisis. Now, let's look at development critically. United Nations Development Programme or UNDP in 1990, they first published a report known as Human Development Report, and after that they have been taking it out every year, and it defines human development, and it has kept the definition flexible and the way to measure it flexible. So it makes amendments in it, and it includes indicators or some indicators which are pointing out to every country different aspects, and also these indicators keep changing, and they tell us in the form of a number which is calculated that how good a country is developed. It also ranks the countries based on their score. Now let's look at the definition of human development itself. Human development is a process. First of all, understand that this is a process. That means it is continuous. It's the process of, first is enlarging the people's choices. The range of people's choices should be enlarged, and they should have increased opportunities for these 4 things. First is education, second is healthcare, third is income, fourth is empowerment. Then development should also cover the full range of human choices, from a sound physical environment to economic, social and political freedom. You should have economic freedom first of all. You should have social freedom next, and you should also have political freedom. Now, thus, enlarging the range of people's choices is the most significant aspect of human development. These choices may involve a variety of issues. The issues may be different for different people. We are all different individuals. We all have different choices. But here are some which are non-negotiable and which everybody requires. First is living a long and healthy life. Second is to be educated. Thirdly, to have access to resources needed for a decent standard of living. And this should include the political freedom and guaranteed human rights and personal self-respect. Now, for this, it's measured on a number. It's known as the Human Development Index, or HDI. This is a statistic composite index of life expectancy, education, and per capita income indicators, which are used to rank countries into 4 tiers of human development. Now, the examples of these indicators are being well fed, being sheltered, being healthy, having work to do, education, having the power to vote, and participating in community life. Now, the number 1 is taken as standard or full or as 100%. So, 1 is the thing, 1.000 is the thing you're comparing the HDI with. Now, if the HDI is above 0.8 or 80%, that is, we say that the level of development is very high. Level of human development is very high. If it is between 0.701 to 0.799, we say that the human development index is high. If it is from 0.550 to 0.700, we say it is the medium level of human development. And if it is less than 0.549, we say that it's a low level of human development. Now, in the 1993 Human Development Report, they said there are 2 conditions which are minimum requirements for a society to be called developed. First one is there should be democratization and it should be progressive. The process of democratization should be progressive, it should not be ending, it should be ongoing process. And the second is increasing, again here you can see a progressive step, increasing empowerment of people. These 2 are required, and it said that development should be woven around the people and not the people around the development. Development is for people and it is not people for development. So if you have if you're fortunate to live in a city which is having all those facilities we talked about at the beginning of this video, all the malls and the flyovers and the metros and whatnot, then it is because of the people who are still living on your footpath. Now, this development has happened for you, but it has not happened for them. They're still on the footpath, they're still looking for food in the garbage. Now, let's understand the applicability of the concepts and indicators to India. Now, this is a table from your textbook, and it shows the HDI index value for different countries and the ranks. This is of the year 2016. So HDI value of Norway is 0.949. That is, they are almost 95% of the ideal society. And in the year 2016, India was at 131st position out of 188 countries, and we had the HDI score of 0.624. Now let us see how we stand now. Our position has increased little bit. We have gone 2 steps upwards in our ranking to 129, and the HDI index today is 0.647. I say today, but these are the figures of the year 2019 because 2020 is not yet ended. Now, if you look at Norway, it has remained at number 1, but the HDI value has come down to 0.954. And you can also find that some countries, they have exactly the same values, like Germany and Hong Kong. They have the same value of 0.939 and they have the same ranking also. That is 4th rank. Even Australia and Iceland, it's the same condition. Sri Lanka and Thailand also same. Sorry, not same. Now if you look at our neighboring countries of Bhutan, it's 0.617 and 134th. Bangladesh is 0.614 and 135th position. Myanmar is 0.584 and 145th position. Pakistan is 0.560 and 152nd position. Just in case you feel that we are doing very well, there are some countries which are relatively unknown. Sierra Leone, which has got a better ranking than us. Now, there are some limitations of this HTI ranking. The HTI score do not take into consideration historical factors like colonization, imperialism, and neo-imperialism. It doesn't take into consideration social cultural factors like discrimination based on race and religion, gender and caste, which unfortunately we have created and it's a problem for ourselves. It doesn't take into consideration social problems like crime or terrorism or wars, and political factors like nature of the state. By state we mean the country, not the federal state, and forms of government like dictatorship or democracy. And also it doesn't take into consideration the level of empowerment, which it should. Now, similar to the international report that is prepared by UNDP, we also have HTI report for our country itself. Now, HTI report or HDR, that is Human Development Report of India, uses the states and union territories as a units of analysis, and each state government or the government of the union territory prepares the HDR on the state level or on the level of the UT, having districts as a units of analysis. And then this is compiled, calculated, and put forward by the Planning Commission of India. Now, STI report in India takes into consideration mainly these four things: income, welfare schemes run by the government, the state government or the union territories, and the basic needs, how they are met, the capabilities of the people living there, and also it looks for economic attainment and social empowerment and social distributive justice and accessibility, also hygiene. Now here we have the HTI marks for the states, the HTI index for the states. Kerala has remained high. This 2007-8 figures are there in your textbook, but this 2019 figures I have put. So wherever you see NA, because your textbook is grouping states, let us say all the northeastern states, they grouped them together and had an STI ranking, which is one rank for the northeastern states. So wherever the figures were not there, I have put NA, but the figures on the HTI 2019 column is for the actual figures of the year 2019, and then you have the ranking. So Kerala ranks number 1 today and Bihar ranks the last, but in your textbook Kerala ranks number 1 and Chhattisgarh ranks the last, because that is the figure of 2007 and 8. Different states and union territories. Now, some important indicators of human development in your textbook. We have the 3 indicators. First is the indicators of economic attainment. The second is indicators for a healthy life, and indicators for social empowerment. So when we talk about the indicators for economic achievement, rich resource base and access to these resources, especially by the poor, is a key to productivity, well-being, and human development. And broadly, there are 2 indicators. One is the GNP, or the gross national product. I have a definition of that in the next slide. And it's per capita availability, that is the per capita availability of GNP. When we say per capita, we mean per person availability. These are taken as measures to assess the resource base to endowment of any country. The GNP is defined as the total value of goods produced and services provided by a country during 1 year, equal to the gross domestic product plus the net income from foreign investments. Something similar known as GDP. Perhaps you have learnt about both these terms in economics. The GDP stands for gross domestic product and is the broadest quantitative measure of a nation's total economic activity. More specifically, GDP represents the monetary value of all goods and all services produced within a nation's geographic borders over a specified period of time, which is usually taken as 1 year. Now, the GDP of a country does not fully reflect the quality of life of the country because there are other factors also which are important for the human life, such as housing, access to public transport, air quality, and access to drinking water, which also determine the standard of living. Now, the indicators of economic achievement, economic attainment and well-being of the individual depend on these three things. One is economic growth, the second is employment opportunities, and thirdly, access to the assets. Now, the reason for decline of proportion of population below the poverty line is because of the per capita income has increased and also the consumption expenditure has increased. Now, BPL, as you know, stands for below poverty line, and the figure for the rural areas in India is 25.7% live below the poverty line, and the figure is 13.7% in the urban areas, and when we look at the country as a whole, it is 21.9%. Now, poverty is a state of deprivation. Even so-called people who are well-to-do may also feel the state of deprivation. In absolute terms, it reflects the inability of an individual to satisfy certain basic needs for sustained, healthy, and reasonable productive living. And jobless growth and rampant unemployment are some of the important reasons for higher incidences of poverty in India. We have growth, but still we have a lot of unemployment in our country. We get to see scenes like this of houseless people, homeless people making a living on the roads. Now, poverty in the Indian states. The maximum percentage of population below the poverty line in your textbook is given as Chhattisgarh, 39.93%, but today it is Bihar. State with least percentage population below poverty line in your textbook also, and today also in reality it is Andaman and Nicobar Islands, where it is less than 1% of the total population. 10 states, if we look at the states of India and we divide them as states with more than 30% people below population, we have 10 such states. We had 11 states with population which is below poverty line, but the composition is 10 to 20%, and 11 states with BPL population less than 10%. So roughly we have one third, and one third of the country's population. One third are above poverty line, one third are the medians, and one third are the lower one third. Now, the indicators of a healthy life are like this. This is a life free from illnesses and diseases and ailments and living a reasonably long life. These are the indicators of a healthy life. And availability of prenatal care and postnatal care. Prenatal care is care of the unborn child, and postnatal care is care of the infant. In order to reduce infant mortality, this is one part, and the second part is the post-delivery deaths of mothers should reduce. The new mothers, or if they have given birth now, they should not die. They should receive adequate care. Next is old age healthcare and adequate nutrition and safety of individuals. Now, if we look at India's achievement over the years, death rate has fallen from 25.1 per population of 1000 in 1951 to 6.5, increased slightly to 7.27 in the year 2019. Remember that these 2019 figures are not there in your textbook. Infant mortality has reduced from 148 per thousand to 37. Now it is about 30.9. And birth rate has also fallen from 40.8 to 20.8, and now it is 17.8 because of lot of awareness among people and literacy is spreading. The life expectancy at birth has increased from 37.1 years to 66.9 to 69.66 years. Still, there are problem areas including declining female sex ratio, especially in the infant age group of 0 to 6 years. Now, if you know the definition of sex ratio, it is the number of females per population of 1000 males. We'll explain that shortly. Now, with the exception of Kerala, the sex ratio has declined all over the country. Kerala has got more number of females per 1000 males. The worst are the so-called developed states of Haryana and Punjab. Because of agriculture, because of green revolution, these two states have developed a lot. Lot of people from Punjab are migrants to Canada and to United States, and it's a developing state, very well developed state. But still, if you look at the number of females for 1000 males, Haryana has got only 879 females, and Punjab has got only 886 females. Haryana has got problems such as the Khap Panchayat, and it is the social attitude which is to be blamed because for such numbers, unhealthy numbers. Now, you know about the Swachh Bharat mission, and the aim is to make India free from open defecation and to achieve 100% scientific management of municipal solid waste and of construction of individual household latrines and community toilets and public toilets, and to make provision for supply of clean energy fuel LPG to all households in rural India, to reduce domestic pollution, which is because of burning coal and burning firewood, and providing potable drinking water, promoting the use of non-conventional energy sources such as solar energy. Now, the indicators of social empowerment. Development includes freedom from hunger, poverty, servitude, bondage, ignorance, illiteracy, and any other form of domination. And this is possible only through empowerment and participation of the people in the exercise of their own capabilities and choices. And literacy plays a key role in this, as it brings knowledge about the society and the environment, not just the natural environment, the social environment also, the scientific environment also. Now, we have some 74.04% of our total population as literate. When we say literate, it means the definition is people who are able to read and write and express their thoughts. We are not talking about people who are good at mathematics or good at science. No, that is not the meaning. And according to that meaning, 65.5% of our females are also literate. And the states from the south of India have got higher figures for both the overall also and as well as the female literacy also. And then you cross-link this literacy rate with the development index, HDI index of the southern states, and they match. So it means that if the literacy is there, the development will also take place. And similarly, you can match the numbers at the lower end also. Bihar, the lowest HDI and the lowest literacy rate. Now, very low literacy rate among the marginalized is there, and there is improvement, but still the gap between the marginalized and the rich is very large. The Planning Commission calculates the HDI for India and takes states and union territories in analysis. We have the highest HDI in Kerala and lowest in Chhattisgarh according to the 2016 numbers, which is given in your textbook. But according to the 2019 numbers, Chhattisgarh has improved and it is Bihar which is lagging behind. Kerala has 100% literacy almost, and it also has less gap between male and female literacy. And Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, and Uttar Pradesh have very low literacy. Economic development, developed states have high HDI, and government has made efforts for a balanced development with main focus on social distributive justice through planned development. People's participation and security were the major issues of UNDP 1993 report, and it is still the main issue. And in 1993 report, UNDP said that we have to recognize, the report recognized a greater constructive role of what they called as civil societies in bringing peace and development. Now, according to them, the civil societies should work at disarmament, disbanding militaries, reduction in military expenditure, transition from defense to production of basic goods and services. There is a small Central American country known as Costa Rica. They don't have any political enmities, no nations surrounding them which are enemies. So they have disbanded their military. They don't have a military, and whatever expenses they used to do on military, they have started doing that on development, housing and education and healthcare, so on and so forth. But that's not possible everywhere in the world. Especially it is not possible in India because of our good neighbors such as Pakistan and China. So it's not possible for us to disarm our army and to disband our military and to reduce expenditure in military. It's not possible for us to do. Now, there is something known as Malthusians or Neo-Malthusians. I have a slide about that. And environmentalists and radical ecologists, they have expressed a different approach. The approach is the need of proper balance between population and resources is needed for happy and peaceful social life. And there's a gap between resources and population. And this gap has widened after 18th century because of the industrial revolution. And there's only a marginal expansion in resources. But there's a phenomenal growth in population. Now, this is the Malthusian concept. The resource is represented by the straight line, and the population is a curved line curving upwards, growing rapidly. And just imagine that if these two curves were parallel to each other, the resources are also growing with the same rate as the population is growing, then we wouldn't have a problem. But it's not the case. The cutting in a point, that is the point of catastrophe. After a certain time, the resources have reduced and the population has grown, and that is what is creating problems. There has to be a parity between the population and resources, because even though there is a greater demand for resources, development has only contributed to increasing the multiple uses of them. We have found multiple uses of the resources. But resources are not a neutral category. Just its availability is not as important as its even distribution. Now, let us give an example about this. Let us say that the south of Jharkhand and the north of Chhattisgarh and the east of Madhya Pradesh is a area which is rich in coal, the mineral coal. Now, that region itself being rich in the mineral is not as important as that mineral reaching all over the country. That is the meaning of even distribution. Rich countries and people have a wider access to resources, while the poor do not. And there is a tendency by the powerful to control more and more resources in order to show off their prowess. Example could be the United States of America. They uh, uh, took over the oil wells in the Gulf countries. They killed Saddam Hussein for different reasons. And they want to show their supremacy. Alright? That could be one example, but you can see so many examples all over the world. And this leads only to conflicts. In Indian context, we have the Indian scriptures. They were always concerned about a balance and harmony. And Mahatma Gandhi reinforced on the harmony and balance between the two. And in his opinion, austerity for individuals, trusteeship of social wealth, and non-violence were key to higher goals. And his thoughts are paralleled by the Club of Rome, the Schumacher, and the Brundtland Commission, and also the Agenda 21 of the Rio Conference. Is Robert Thomas Malthus. This is the end of the chapter, and I'll see you in next chapter. If you like it, if you feel it's beneficial for you, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Shortly, I'll be putting questions which are asked in board exam. See you soon.